Hey, welcome to the show. You are listening to the Roosic podcast.
We are a roots music podcast based here out of Nashville, Tennessee, where we have conversations with the local music scene.
Our guest today is sweet Megg. Megg is a singer, performer, songwriter. It's a lot of fun.
If you like our content, you should subscribe to our channel.
Check it out. That's really the dream, I think, is to get like some kind of bubbly water sponsorship, whether it's Liquid Death or Topo Chico or something like that. That's the dream. It's all going to be
until they notice us. You know?
That's where we're going to start to like just tag
One
them.
day it'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll get there eventually. We're just not there yet. You know?
Yeah.
It's baby steps, Ryan. It's baby steps. There you go. The tune sounded really nice though. What that last one you did was that's a new one too, right?
Yeah, they're both off the new record.
Nice. So that's all in the can, I assume, right?
Yeah, it's all recorded, and we just finished mixing it like 2 days ago, and then it's we're just mastering it hopefully in the next few weeks.
Did you do that in Nashville? Or did you do that in New York?
I did in Nashville. We did it. We basically started in January of this year.
Okay.
So it's like a 2024 project. So it started
Gotcha.
January 2024 and finished it hopefully by January 2025.
Nice. So who's on that record?
Let's say I'm gonna burp away from that. All this bubbly water and I'm burping into it. Champagne, straight sip.
Brian has that problem, and I never have that problem. He like gets so
Topo
offended.
Chico is so bubbly. It's
Yeah.
like the worst drink you can drink while you're podcasting.
Yeah, and then add a bucha to it.
We do it anyways for some reason.
Anyway, keeps it interesting. Anyway, I was answering. What was I answering? The question?
Who's on the record? Who's on the new record?
It's produced by Mose Wilson and Dennis Crouch.
Oh, fantastic!
And it's got them on it. And then Russ Paul is on steel and electric guitar. And then as is Mose. And then we got Billy Contreras on fiddle, and Jeff Taylor's in piano and accordion. Chris Gelb is on drums and percussion. Hannah Juanita is on like 2 tracks doing some backup vocals, as is Mose and Chris.
Oh, that's awesome.
Eamon McLaughlin is also doing some backup vocals and like a tiny, more of like the fiddle part he's doing is kind of like it's for this Irish song-ish thing. So he's just doing like an intro outro thing, but he's
Nice.
on it for that. And Dan Hitchcock doing some saxophone.
Oh, nice. That's a heck of a lineup right there.
Yeah, it's not for every song. But
that's a really great lineup.
Yeah.
What I'm curious, like, because in my head, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I always feel like you kind of have like this split life where you have the New York stuff and you have the Nashville stuff. Does it still, or has it ever felt that kind of dissected for you, or is it starting to become one thing now in your musical life? Is it starting to kind of meld into something singular?
That's something I've been trying to do. I feel like my whole life has felt dissected in two, because I feel like I've always been two things at once, and I'm really trying to make them one. So with this, I think that it is starting to happen. It's like because I'm doing less of everything.
Okay.
So then keeping like my favorite bits of everything I did. And so it's like I'm still doing jazz gigs every once in a while because I still like doing that. But I'm playing less in New York, so I'm like less glued to there, whereas before I was like there all the time. But because there all the time, I didn't have time to fully engulf myself in Nashville. And but yeah, so now I'm kind of as mixed. And also, I don't know, I'm just doing more original. So I think so. I guess the answer to that is I think it is.
Yeah.
The goal is that it is. And also, I just feel like I want to be, I don't know, I just like to put out music. And I know I like to put out a lot of different things. And I feel like everyone's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I play music. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's
and
another thing I'm curious about with you. Like, do you feel like you have to creatively pigeonhole yourself in that way? Or do you feel like, in terms of genre, in terms of style?
I hate that.
Yeah,
I don't like doing that.
Does it feel like you can kind of just do whatever you want to do?
Because I feel like that's been my whole issue, because like this whole society is like obsessed with categories. Especially, it's like, I feel like we have this social media thing is like, oh, we're all such individuals, but like, let's put ourselves in as many boxes as possible.
Exactly.
And it's like, I feel like I don't like that, because I feel like I never did music because I wanted to be like a star. Like I said, it's like I didn't plan on being a musician or artist full time at all.
Yeah, your entry into this is kind of wild in my head. It's like, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I ever planned, and so I think because of that, because I'm doing it, when I'm doing music, I'm just doing what I like to do, and it ends up being what's in front of me. So when I was in New York, jazz was in front of me, and it's who paid me to play the most. So I did a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
And I was still writing the whole time. Then country got more and more in my life, and there was more gigs for that. So I did more country. Then I was in Nashville. Then I was in the South. And like, it just like kind of, I've just followed the music in
Where'd
front
you
of me.
grow up?
I grew up in Jersey, like New York
okay.
City, Jersey. I was born in the
Gotcha.
city, but parents were kind of artists in the city. So I feel like I've got the Jersey background, but I also have the New York background.
best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
a really sweet, I grew up in a sweet spot of that area. But the city is definitely my normal, and that's a music culture I kind of grew up in.
How long have you been coming into Nashville for now? Because now obviously you live here, but what was that transition like? Just spending more time here? Like, what's that timeline look like?
I was touring a lot. I came down to the South when I was like 18 to work on a river, and that was my first time in the South. It was in like Asheville, and I remember really like digging. I'd never really known anything about country music or bluegrass, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I went back north, and I didn't live in the South at all. And when I started touring, with the jazz stuff, when I was doing like Sweet Megg and the Wayfarers and like the whole tragedy stuff, I started going more south because I was in New Orleans and I was just interested in the South. I wanted to go back to Asheville, and I just kind of found myself in Nashville touring, and I was like, this is a cool place. And then I was getting more and more into like Americana music up in New York and like into country music, and I was like, and I just kept coming down. I think that was like 2017 maybe that I started coming down here. And I remember I started making friends. I started going to some of the scene, and like it just kind of like became more and more like I made more and more friends. I started coming down like a couple times a year, and then I was here. And then like in 2019, I moved down here for like 3 months.
Oh yeah,
And
I
then,
remember that. Yeah.
I was here for 3 months, and then I got a big touring gig, so I was going to be on tour for a while. So I moved out of a place and just lived on the road. And then when January of 2020 hit, I was like, feels like I should be in New York again. So I moved back into New York January 2020, and then obviously we know what happened that year. Gotcha. And then I by the halfway through that year, I came down to Tennessee to live on a farm with my cousin, because New York was kind of getting scary. We weren't sure if we could stay there because we weren't making any money and there was no unemployment.
Had nothing to do, yeah.
And so I was on a farm in Tennessee, and then I was in Tennessee again, and I don't know, back and forth. Ended up 2021, I moved here.
Okay.
That was a really long-winded
No, that's the
way of
condensed
saying that.
time.
But yeah, it's just so it was like it took me like three or 4 years to actually move here, but I started like it's like I've been interacting with the scene for like 7 years, I guess, but officially for 3.
What did you find, just in terms of approach and maybe personality, for lack of a better word? What do you find the differences between the music scene there and the music scene here, or is there not one?
There's a huge difference. Yeah. I think there's a huge difference in New York and Nashville, and I personally think they're very complementary. At least for my own purposes in life, they were very complementary. Because I feel like in New York, I feel like it was really hard work, and it was all about chops, and like it was just like, you know, it's just constant. Like I just gigged so much. Like I just did so many gigs up there because you just had to do it to make rent. You have to like play every day.
What kind of, not to derail your answer here, but what kind of gigs were those generally for you?
Mix of stuff like jazz clubs, fancy hotels, private events.
Okay.
Weird Bushwick stuff, you know, like hippie parties, you know, like there was all this different, like it was very diverse community. Like I hosted a jam in a diner, and I also threw parties in this loft, but then I also would do like fancy,
that's really cool,
swanky hotel bars, and I don't know, anything you could get your hands on basically. Yeah. But because of that, it's like the cats up there like just get really good because you just play so much. But you also have to play so much. So there's not much time to like get together and jam or like rehearse these arrangements or like, you know, stuff you do down here. And down here, I felt like I started playing with people, and like I remember I'm so used to like showing up at a gig and just like being ready to kind of lead the gig, and like no one knows the music and everyone's gonna use their ears. And I remember when I first started playing down here and hiring cats, and like they'd show up with like charts, and I was like, you listen to the songs? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, you know the songs? Like, it's just like, not only listen to them, they actually like wrote notes down.
You guys are professionals.
And it's like, in New York, it's like, it's not even like a disrespect thing. It's just like people work so hard that like they can't afford to do that. Like they don't have time to rehearse.
And it's just a different culture too. Yeah. I mean, we had my buddy Rye Bradley on a few weeks ago, and we were kind of talking about a similar thing where, you know, when you're gigging that much and that just becomes your daily routine, you don't have the time to sit down with a piece of music like that. And you don't have the time that you might want to practice in the different facets that you want to practice. I mean, it's when music is your life in that way, it is all encompassing. It does take over everything. So
and I think the thing, it's like in there, here's what I always say, compare the people as a band leader when I'm hiring people from the different scenes. It's like the New Yorkers have to use their ears because they didn't have time to practice. But because of that, they have really good ears and use their ears. And then in Nashville, I find a lot of them that will learn the songs is great, but sometimes it's hard to get them to use their ears. So it's like in that, like, and not meaning that they can't.
No,
like I find people who I'm like, I know that they can use their ears, but they're so glued to the chart that I'm like, hey, we're not doing that. Yeah. Like, you know, or like just like follow me, just trust me, you know. Or
Brian knows from playing just about every gig with me that of my stuff I've done in the last decade that I'm a use your ears kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, well, each everything is plus and minus, right? So in New York, everyone has these great ears, but what's frustrating is sometimes I'm like, hey, could you like read the chart?
Or learn the song.
You know, this one has a bit of an arrangement. Like, could you not just wing it? You know,
I personally hate playing that way because you have to focus so much on just like, okay, what's coming next?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
there's definitely a balance there.
Yeah, well, so that's why I say they're complementary.
I like being prepared enough to where I don't even have to think about what comes next, and I can just kind of like lose myself in whatever I'm playing.
Yeah, I really do think there was a balance.
It makes it hard
there.
to do that when you're kind of doing like a last minute thing you didn't have time to prepare for.
Yeah, that's why I say I'm, for my own like needs, it's the complement of the both is perfect. Like it's a sweet spot for me because I think I've learned from my New York years and I've learned from my Nashville years. And now I feel like I'm in a space that I'm really enjoying where I'm like, you know, trying to find musicians who I know are willing to learn the tune so we can do exactly what you said. It's like, you know, inside the tune so that then you can play within the tune and it just makes for more complex music.
That's the magic.
You know,
Totally.
like that's why I love the two. Like I love, a lot of times my bands I feel like are ex-New Yorkers and Nashville people, like mixing the two is, it's so perfect to me.
When you're writing, are you, do you find that you write because of the kind of music that you tend to play? Do you find that you're almost writing for arrangement, or is it more writing for melody and lyric? Like if you were more of a songwriter with a guitar in front of you.
I feel like I feel like I'm finding my writing again. So right now it's been a long time. I had a long space of time between writing and not writing and writing again. So I feel like I'm redefining what that means to me. And I feel like most of the time when I'm writing, I'm just kind of like something's happening and I'm moving with it. But usually usually it's like I'll have a line in my head or I'll have a guitar in front of me and a melody and then just see what happens. But usually what ends up happening is what ends up happening to the song is something that's meant for more than just me. Because I feel like inevitably I'm so used to kind of leading a band, I think that I hear the drums and I hear the bass, but I am incapable of playing the vibe I'm going for. And like also just like space, like I'm like, oh, it definitely needs a solo here. But like I can't play a solo. Yeah. So like, you know, it's just like little things like that end up always happening in the song once it's like kind of built its structures. So then it ends up being like, I don't know. I always feel super weird playing songs by myself because I'm just like, this isn't.
Well, like I was saying earlier, like I think it was really fun to see you play like this because I've never seen you sit down with just you and a guitar and do that. So that's the other thing that we've talked about. It's just kind of fun to see people in that environment that they may not necessarily be totally accustomed to, and you find beautiful moments in that. Like the songs sounded.
It's tough playing by yourself though.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not a strong guitar player. As I've started as when I was younger, I did like ukulele when I was like in high school and stuff, which was like. I did that before. It was like I did ukulele because it was a joke almost. And then I got involved with this ukulele forum because like I started doing these gigs in New York. It's like a long-winded, weird story. I never meant to be part of like this whole... Remember when there's like ukuleles in like the 2000s were like super big and it was like super annoying? So I was like doing it, like playing it, and then I kind of got roped into that because it was getting so big. But I always feel weird that I'm like defined by... Because I was like, I was not into that.
Ukulele player.
Yeah, but anyway, I just was not into that scene. I just like benefited off it because there were a lot of gigs for it. But
this is a completely...
Anyway, I was just saying that to say that I started in 4-string, moved to tenor guitar and tenor banjo, and so 6-string feels very clunky for me. Still, like I've been playing for a while now, but I'm still struggling with it. So like, I just get tired easily. Like bars are really tiring. Like I'm just I feel like sloppy on it. So when I do solo, I'm just like I don't know.
Yeah, I love your tenor guitar playing, and I feel like we need more of that in town. Whenever I see you play tenor guitar, I think
it's fun, but it's really for a band. Like when it's solo, it's so boring. It's like extra boring.
Same thing with tenor band. I love tenor banjo.
I don't even know what a tenor guitar is. What is that?
Well, mine is Chicago style, which just basically means the top 4 of a guitar. So there's no E and A. There's no low E and A.
So basically like a ukulele, just like
tuned.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like nice. I love tenor banjo. I'm not a banjo player. went to school with and have played with just phenomenal 5-string banjo players. And probably a handful of years ago, I said, you know what I want to get into, because I love tenor banjo. I said, I'm going to get into tenor banjo, and it kicks my ass. It's
I just do
fun.
Chicago tuning, so it's easy.
No, but it's I mean, it's great, but it works so well for that. But it's different. I mean, you can't. It doesn't support the same way as a solo instrument that 5-string banjo does. But I love it in the context of a band. I think it just sounds.
Yeah,
so
I
good.
went the opposite route of adding too many strings on my guitar. I have 7.
Oh, you have a 7-string guitar. Wow.
Yeah, you play a lot of 7-string. But for what you do. So he does a lot of solo arrangements and
only for solo stuff. If I'm playing for a band, I have a 6-string.
Yeah,
but
you're not a heathen. You're
you're
not crazy.
It's never necessary unless you're playing metal or something,
then
which I don't.
Yeah, not necessary. I'm curious what was the timeline of your relationship to writing? How did that unfold? Just in terms of kind of finding your own voice as a writer.
That I started right away because when I was in high school, I was always into writing, just literary writing. Like I did a lot of writing classes, and I did stand-up class once, but that was because my mom made me do it. But I liked that, and I liked poetry, and I was a really avid journaler, and I played a lot of piano, like classical piano. So it was I had those things separate in my mind, and I found I don't know, I was a little crazy in high school, and I found that one of my ways to kind of relieve my tension, like some stress and stuff, was to kind of verbally, almost speak out loud, verbally. Instead of just writing down my poetry I would verbally kind of sing it out loud. Yeah. And then I started playing ukulele for fun, because my family sings a lot together. We have Thanksgiving, we sing, and I was I want to learn a stringed instrument. And my cousin was running around the house with the ukulele and doing Back to the Island. That I was as a joke, I'm going to get really good at ukulele just because it's hilarious. I was 16. And so I started writing songs, and became I kind of went backwards. I was I don't know, I'll put this to it. And I started writing these kind of angsty songs. And I got a gig because there were these 2 guys in New York, in the West Village, called Sonic Uke, and they had a show on what's the cable,
public broadcast.
And I was these guys are hilarious. They had feather boas, and they would just do crazy covers. And I emailed them. I was
that's
hey,
who we need to get on the show. Wow.
I wonder if they exist or not. I emailed them. I was when are you playing in? I'd love to see you. I just want to come see you show. And they're I'm playing Outer Strung Head. Do you want to open for us? And I was okay. And I was I'll write some songs. So then I was 16, and I wrote a couple songs for that, and I was in the East Village, and I did that gig, and I was well, this was fun. And then I just kind of, because of that, they invited me to do these they were called the Midnight Ukulele Cabaret, and it was in the Village on Saturdays, and it was at a bar, but I was underage, but they would let me in. I was the one person they'd let in underage. And because I was just getting these gigs, I was well, I guess I should keep writing. And so I just kept writing songs. And it kind of just came from that.
Interesting.
And that brought me to France with this stuff. And it was just it all just kind of unfolded in this weird story that I just followed. And I never meant to do it. I just always did it. Because I would travel and I was doing stuff, and it was always kind of therapeutic, and it was a way to make money on the side. When I was getting, my head together. And when I went to college, I just kept doing it on the side for fun.
Yeah.
I just kept writing and doing it. It was never on purpose. It just kept happening. So I guess that's how it evolved,
When was that pivot for you of, obviously music has been in your life for a long time, but when did that pivot occur where you thought, okay, no, this is the direction I want to head in, as opposed to just this thing over here that's helping me kind of, make some money on the side?
It's in some ways, because I was doing it on the side, I always took it seriously in some ways, but I always was but my parents are artists. I was I'm not really gonna you can't ever, I don't want to be, wacky like my parents. I want a real job. So I was doing it as a job, but I was always I was always gigging, but I kind of always working on it and getting better at it, but always being nah, but I'm gonna get a real job.
Yeah, it was kind of at arm's length.
Yeah, and so I feel though then I after college I had a couple different jobs. I was a bike messenger and on different things. I worked in marketing for 6 weeks. But then I got this job finally doing something I really wanted, which was research, because I would mainly want to do history.
Yeah.
And so I got this historical research job for this documentary film company, and they work with PBS on this show. And I was doing that for like 2 years, I think. And I was gigging, but at the same time, I was dating this jazz guitar player, was singing more and more because I'd gone to jazz school in France and like had come home from that and was like into it and still singing and gigging. And I remember I just hit a point where I was like doing well in my job, but I was like, it was like, 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, 5 days a week. And then I was gigging most nights, and it was like I'd be in the bathroom of our office, like, going from office clothes to like a silk dress and like putting on makeup. And everyone thought I was like, they're like, Meg's so crazy, because I would always like, everyone else would like lounge in the office and chill, and I was always like, I gotta go, I got a gig. And like, and it was just getting too crazy. And I was kind of like, I gotta like, am I doing this or am I not doing this?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that was the point. I was like,
either commit or no.
I was like, I'm making good money, but I'm also like doing 2 jobs at once.
Yeah.
I'm like literally working the amount of hours of 2 different jobs at one time. And so that's when it was. I think that was like 2000. I don't know, when I graduated college was like 2012. So that was probably like 2014, 15, something like that. And I finally just, because I could quit my job, because I also hit a point with that job where it was like, couldn't really stay at the level I was at. It was like, if you're going to stay in the company, it's like either become an associate producer or like you step down, because it's just like you don't want a researcher to just be there forever. So it's kind of like,
even if a huge portion, or at least a decent portion of your income was coming from music, did it still feel scary to make that change, to think, okay, I am going to let this go and go down this path?
It didn't, because I waited. I do this with most things, and sometimes it's to a fault, because on the way in it like hurts, but once it happens, it's good. But like I did it until I didn't want to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. So like I kept the security, because I think also like, since I didn't grow up with like any money or whatever, like with artist parents, like I've always been aware of like, well, I don't really want to like be smart with money, and so I waited until I was like absolutely like kind of sick of doing that job. Mm-hmm. I was like kind of not into the PBS world. Like it was too pretentious, and like, I just was like, and I didn't like TV. It's like I did it enough where I was like, I don't want to do TV. And I also made, I did the math of like, if I stayed in an office job, how many hours a week I would be in an office versus how I wouldn't. And I was like, I'm not gonna spend most of my living life in an office. Totally. And so that was, so it was easy. It was like, cool. It was all just like money. It was like, okay, cool. That's making more money. That's less hours of the day in an office. And I don't like TV, so cool. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, but that's how I've always done things. It's like kind of, I walk until it's like,
until you get to that point where you just can't anymore. Yeah. I think there's certainly something, there's certainly something to say about that. I mean, that can be a scary time for people to make that leap, and sometimes you do it at different points in life. It's not always a one and done thing. So I'm always just interested to hear how people deal with that, because for some people it's like the sky is falling, and for other people like yourself, it's maybe more of an incremental thing until you just get to that point where you think, no, this is what I'm going to do, and it doesn't feel like such a leap.
Yeah, but, I don't know. That's why I like to do things, I think. So,
I mean, there's probably some wisdom to that, but. Another thing that I wanted to pick your brain about, this is something that I feel like there's been quite a few people in here where we've gone this route with conversation, but I'm always just enamored with how people's relationship to their parents' relationship to art works into their life. So, for me, neither of my parents are musicians or I mean, I would say that they both certainly have artistic fascinations in life and things that they really enjoy, but they're not. That's not how they ever made a living. And for you, that was very much the opposite. You have very artsy parents and people who were in that world. What was that like for you growing up? Like, how did you get to that point where you thought, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. Mm-hmm. I want to be a banker, or I want to be a politician, or like whatever.
Let me get one more cough up before I answer that. I'm just getting over this sickness.
Yeah, there was something going around Nash the last couple weeks.
Yeah, it's been bad. Yeah. My boyfriend was sick for like a week, and then I got it.
This is a long awaited appearance, because we had to reschedule a couple of times, sadly. So we're just so happy that you're. That's how we should open the pod.
We were sick, and then you were sick,
and then and I'm barely not sick. So anyway,
but you're here, damn it.
Yeah.
You're here. Yeah.
Finally made it happen.
But I'd say, with my experience, I think probably the first thing, like, I would say that's different from, like I said earlier, is like my rebellion, me and my brother, us being rebellious teenagers, was like my brother being like, I'm going to be an accountant. My dad be like, no, never, my son, and it's like, which is definitely different than most people's, like, like, I don't know. But I think that it's good. There's good and bad. Like, so it's like, I think in my experience, I grew up with wacky hippie artist parents. So like, and in Jersey, because like most of their friends, they were in the city. They had a loft in the city, but they just moved to Jersey because my mom's family has had a house there, and they moved back with my aunt when we were little because it was just too expensive to be in the city. And so most of our friends though were in the city. So we had a lot of wacky friends versus like everyone I went to school with were like Jersey, like very. That area is like very Italian Jersey, like lots of J.Lo sweatsuits, and like I had like all this stuff. I had like the tight jeans and like to fit in. So it was definitely like that was odd to have the weird artsy parents. But I think the good side of it was like I got to grow up going to theater. Like when I was sick, I would go to my mom's comedy class. I would make sure I was sick on Thursdays because my mom teaches comedy at this university, and like I would always get to go and watch the stand up and watch college kids do improv comedy, and like. I grew up, hanging out in backstage at theaters and like Law and Order sets or Sopranos and that was cool because it was just like that was normal for me, and I didn't know that wasn't normal.
Yeah.
Or like also just being always accepted, like where I am now as an artist is like my parents are like, oh, you're like totally, like there's no question of like me. I'm kind of like, no, I want a job. They're like, no, keep being an artist. I'm like, no, I kind of want to get a job, like, and I think that's
so funny because that's just the complete opposite of my life experience so far.
So there's a lot of pluses to that, I think, and it's nice because my parents are really inspiring for me. Like they pushed, like my dad really pushed me and my brother. Like he had this whole vision of like how to raise us, and like he was like, he taught me to do art by when we were little, and we'd have like hooky days where he would take me and my brother out of school and we'd go to museums or art galleries in the city.
I love that's another thing that I wanted to ask. I wanted to know because again, this is something that just wasn't a part of my life. I mean, there was always, again, my parents really appreciate art, but it just wasn't something, it wasn't their world, like I always had good music in the house, and that kind of thing, but it just wasn't a thing. When you are raised by people where that is their life, what sort of indoctrination, for lack of a better word, is being put on you? Is it this idea of just here's all of this stuff that I love, find the thing that you love, or was it more structured, or was it just more like how did they go about that? I'm just so fascinated with that.
I think they were very into giving us the space, but also the tools. Because like my dad's family were from, like they were upstate New York, his French Canadian, and they were very like old school, very like Catholic, very like country not bumpkin, but just very like sheltered. And so he really rebelled against that and was like a hippie and went to New York and like that. And so my mom, they were like more immigrants, so because they came from Ireland, but like they were artistic line. Like her father was a photographer, but he ended up being a mechanic. Her mother wanted to be in that world, but it was like there were still kind of remnants of a more strict Catholic thing. So I think for them, because of that, they really wanted to allow us to find what we wanted. And like my dad, he grew up, like he gave us a lot of philosophy stuff to read when we were little, because he grew up in that world. He's a Sufi, he's not Catholic anymore, but he was like, I don't care what religion you are, but I want you to have a faith of some sort. He's like, it's important to have faith, whether it's like, I believe in this, cheese, like whatever. You just believe in something. So he like let us found that, but he also gave us different books to read and like philosophies. And same with art. Like I remember like he had a lot of like classical music he would play. Like I remember like running around with my stuffed animals and he'd like blast Aaron Copland, and like we would like, just because he wanted to show us that. And same with the art class, and like he wanted to expose us to as much art as we could at a young age. And like same with like theater, and like I've seen a lot of great movies in theater like at a pretty young age, because my parents were kind of like, I mean, I don't want you to watch crappy movies. Yeah,
exactly.
So like we're going to expose you to good stuff, know? And
it's
so
like, I don't care that you're not going to get vertigo. You're going to watch vertigo.
Yeah. And so that was kind of cool. Like, so that's what they gave us tools in that way, like they and that was really nice to have, I think. And they also just like it inspired us to think critically about our art and what we're thinking about, and to make sure to read and have thought and purpose. And they also were very into not like in a good way, not helping us. Like my mom was like, I'm not going to like help you get gigs. Like you need to get your own gigs. You need to figure out if you wanted an artist career, because they know how hard it is. They were really into like, okay, well then go work. Like go because there are things she teaches too. And she's always like, if you really want to be an artist full time, you have to be very good. Because it was like, if you're not like, because it's like, it's brutal. And if you're not very good, you're not gonna make enough money. So be realistic about how hard you have to work. Like be realistic. You have to practice that much. Be realistic. And that's how I think was one of the reasons I think I've been so careful about steps, because I'm just kind of like, I don't, I want to be realistic, like, and not just be like, I'm going to be a star, because it's like, that's unrealistic, So, but I am, it's like, maybe I will be a working jazz musician for a couple of years. Like, that's a realistic goal, And
I think also people, I mean, this is sort of stating the obvious, but people get into these things for different reasons. I think there are those people where it is more surface level, and it is, and not that I think there's necessarily anything morally wrong with that, but where people do get into that because they think, I want the attention on me, I want the praise, and I want I guess in today's world, I want the followers, I want the likes.
Yeah.
And then there are people, exactly, I feel the same way. And then there are people who are just, for whatever reason, obsessed with the process of doing the thing, and just fall in love with the process of getting better at music, whatever that looks like for you, because that's different for everyone. But I feel like those are the people the ones who can play the long game, and it's often those who just are so immersed in it that play the long game do the best. And those people where it is more service level and it is more me, they just, you check out at a certain point because it is so damn hard, and because it is so, it just beats you down if you're not careful.
But I think there's good and bads to everything, though. There's ups and downs, everything. It's all about what you choose you want to do. Because I think the other thing to think about, and I've total respect for it, is like the people like think of the pop stars and people who can really make it. I think that's a skill. I think that's something. It's something I know I don't have, and I'm okay with that because I don't want it. Same. But it's like there's a skill to like believing in what you do so much that you are gonna be like, it's me, and like and I think that's something that's profound and cool that people can do it. And so I kind of like, and you see it. I feel like you see people who make it there and have that thing, and I'm like, you know what, you like and that will work. And it's like sometimes it works so well that you make enough money that it's okay if you burn out because and I think that's one route. And for me personally, it's like I've trained myself to be outgoing, but like my natural state is much more inward. Like I liked piano and painting. That was like, and books, history books. That was my ideal place. But I found myself in this world that I also really like playing music, and singing jazz songs is super fun. And like, I really like all this stuff, and I like creating art, and I love rocking out my band. But a lot of that involves like social media and like talking on mics and all this stuff that I'm like, ugh, I'm like looking nice. Like my hair have to look nice. I mean, and I hate that part, but I do it because part of the job, you got to do it, but it's not my like favorite part.
And if I've learned anything in my short life, it's that there's no one way to do any of these things. I mean, for me, I think I found probably later than I should have that all of that stuff has to go, at least for me and my own sanity, has to go out the window, and it has to be, okay, if you're going to do this and you're going to invest all this time and money and effort into even just something like this, I only have interest in doing that if it's me, if the people on the other end of that are seeing me. Because I think with art, whatever that particular art is, there oftentimes is a constructed image there of someone. And a lot of people feel very strongly about that. I know I did at certain points in my life. But I've kind of given up on that. Not in the sense that I feel like I had to surrender to something or to be defeated in some way. But I just realized that's not what I want. I don't want an image of me out there. I just want to be me. And if you're gonna get any semblance of success in anything in life, I think it's the worst case scenario is to be wildly successful, have wild success for an image that isn't truly you, or is at least just a facet.
I will play devil's advocate on that one, because I actually don't agree with that. I think that there's an art in the character, but also my parents are actors.
Absolutely, there certainly is.
For my counter argument to that would be David Bowie, because I love David Bowie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think David Bowie was as him as he could be, and I think that his character was so vividly constructed. He constructed that. That is a thing that he built So where's the line? What is it, the character, or was it really him? It's both, I think.
Oh,
and
I
think it's like
it's a choice.
amplification
It's a
of
choice.
himself.
Yeah.
But I think it's a choice. And I think, and also, like, here's another thing. Like, I'm not even a big fan of, like, Lady Gaga. But, like, I think that if you want to build an image that's separate from you so that, in some ways, that, like, you go home and you can be... I think that's okay, actually, too. As long as it's done, if it's like the character you're building is truthful.
Oh, again,
I think there's something there.
I think that that's not to say that's a one-size-fits-all solution. I've just found for myself that...
but yeah, for yourself.
And I think it's also... This is going to sound a little counterintuitive here and probably sound like it's defeating my previous statement. But for me, too, and you know this, we've played gigs together, I write exclusively in character. I don't write... I have no interest in going up on stage and being like, these are my feelings. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm unbelievably moved by many people who do just that. And the vast majority of people who make art or make music do that. But I just don't have interest in that. So there is also this weird juxtaposition there, whereas I feel like on one hand, I want to be completely myself, but that theater is always present. Like when I'm up there, that it is theater. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, and so to me, it does seem, I'm sure that is more messy than I would like to think it is. But when I'm up there as a performer, it's absolutely theater. There's no,
but
it's not murky at all.
I think there is a space in the middle that, like, we can agree on about, like, I know now I'm seeing what you mean, because if you're accepting the character, because, like, that's true. It's like, what is true to you is you being that character and writing that is you, truthfully. And I think, like, one thing I think of as an example of maybe what isn't is, it's like when you see people, you see it at gigs all the time, especially in New York with the jazz gigs, like, okay, I walk into a bar and then, like, phone, jazz, we're playing, and then we're at that jazz gig. Put it down, walk away, and never go back to music. Like, that's a very fake moment. You've just created that moment. Like, you made a video as if you've been partying and listening to this jazz band.
Yes.
You did not do that, and you just made that image. And so your personality, your character was not changed or manipulated by this image. You know, you aren't a person who goes and listens to jazz. You're a person who pretends to go and listen to jazz.
Yeah.
So, like, in that way, that kind of stuff,
maybe she's pretending to be a person who goes to pretend to be listening to jazz.
I mean, maybe, but then again, everyone has a right to their own version of whatever they are. So that's the thing too. That's kind of, I believe in that deeply too. But I mean, that's something I can see, and that is something that can be a little exhausting in this day and age, where it's kind of like, I think country music has that. I mean, everything has it. Jazz has it too, where it's like, I'm a flopper. It's like everyone wants to fit into a box.
Brian actually said this is Brian's been my best friend for many years now, and Brian said, as quiet as this man is, every once in a while he has a real gem of a real pearl of wisdom. And Brian actually said the wisest thing to me about this many years ago, probably 5-6 years ago. We had moved to Nashville, obviously, at this point, and I think this is back when we were living together. And at some point, Brian was kind of getting burnt out from the country scene here. He was really starting to kind of go down that rabbit hole and was doing a lot of those gigs. And I remember one night we were just sitting on the couch and Brian was getting pissed off. He was saying something to the effect of, like, all these people fucking move to Nashville and they start wearing fucking cowboy boots and cowboy hats and stuff. And it's like, and it's not them. And he said something to the effect of, I've known you for however many years. And when we lived in fucking Boston, Massachusetts, Casey, you wore cowboy boots because that's who you are. And it was this weird moment of realization of, like, oh yeah, like, that's just who I am as a person. And I also, I also have other weird idiosyncratic things about just who I am, as everyone does. But it was this really beautiful moment of recognition that I think, oh, you really nailed that. Like, you hit the nail on the head with that. Like, there is a lot of that image construction, which isn't a bad thing. I really have nothing.
I just have a really hard time with that, And
I think it's because of day and age, though, with social media.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. But I did feel when I moved here that there was, like, this pressure to, like, try to look like you're from the country and put on the boots and, like, and I just have a really hard time because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Like I grew up skateboarding in California, like, it's just so far. And I think it's cool, people who are genuinely like that. But, like, for me, just trying to play the character is, like, really difficult.
Yeah, we went on tour
And
years ago, and I
there's-
remember giving you a pair of boots because you didn't.
And I hated it because I've never like
Thank God we're the same shoe
voluntarily
size.
worn boots, and I never plan on it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a shame because I believe in it's fun to look nice on stage. I will always say that, like, don't come on my stage wearing shorts and flip flops. But at the same time, I also think you have every right to like not wear Western wear and still play Western music, and vice versa with everything else.
But
Like you're allowed to wear Western wear and play jazz.
I
personally
there are
think
people who will.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah.
it stinks because I feel like
you
that.
are kind of hindering yourself if you don't play that character.
Yeah, I think that's
for sure.
That's what's because like that's something that I dealt with that when I came to town too, because I'm similar. Like I have always worn cowboy boots, and I've always but mine is like I always feel like my fashion has been like a lane, like Ralph Lauren Western from the '90s, which is like literally I'm wearing an
Mine is I'm an
entirely
85-year-old
I'm literally
man.
wearing an entirely '90s Ralph Lauren like a lean outfit. So I've always worn that kind of stuff, but I'm also like I'm not kidding with myself. Like I'm not country. I'm Jersey, and I'm upstate New York, so I guess I'm that kind of I've got that in my blood like that. But that's a different thing. That's Adirondack chairs. It's not but. I think that I always felt that like push to do that, but it's the same with the jazz. When I started doing jazz and 20s jazz, at first I felt the need to like freaking wear like little flapper outfits, and I was never good at it because I would always like look awkward because I have like rock and roll hair and then like some like little flapper dress on, and it was always like I look like a little kid who got dressed for morning. And I feel a Western, and now I'm like settling into like somewhere in the middle of everything. Like I got my jazz dresses and I got my weird horse shirts, and sometimes I wear cowboy boots, sometimes I wear fringe, sometimes I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
All of that stuff is so messy to me. I mean, there's again like a lot of things in life. I don't think there's a right answer to it. But like for example, I think a lot of I love traditional American music. Like that's what I went to school to get a degree in. I love American roots music, and hence Roosic.
Oh, that's what that is. Roots music, Roosic. Got it. Okay, cool.
And like that's the music that I love. There's a great many styles of music that I adore, but that's the thing that just really has my heart is traditional American music, and just the tracking of that and how that all plays out over time. I just think is fascinating. But all that to say, there is something about the way that is presented in a contemporary context that sometimes, not always, but can sometimes leave a weird taste in my mouth where it's like, I adore this music, but it's not 1922 anymore. Or it's like, I love this music, but it's not 19, you can feel this way when you're going out to listen to music here. Like, okay, it's not 1959. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't think that there is a right or wrong way to approach that. It's like, it's whatever is, at least the place that I've gotten to as a person is whatever is authentic to what you want to do. Like that's the only way that's the only right answer.
Yeah.
there.
And I've definitely like come to terms with it a little more than I have in the past. Like I'm okay with dressing up a little bit, and
Yeah, I think that at that time
you got to play the game. You know
I feel
what
like once
mean?
I realized that I wasn't forced to. I feel like I put it on myself that I was forced to, right? I felt that, and I let myself be influenced, and I think that's why I got some negative feelings towards it, like especially with my ex New York stuff, and even with Nashville. And I feel like, but now I feel differently about it. I feel like if you want to play that game, then play that game. It's just the same thing I said about the pop artists, like if you have that thing that you're that kind of a branding mind and you can sell yourself that way, then good on you. Like if you feel comfortable, like I don't feel comfortable doing like sexy videos, like I can't do that shit. I feel weird. But if you can, fucking go for it, girl. Like get those likes because you will help, whatever. And I think that I've realized, and also like I also really like old stuff. So it's like I love like revivalist, what is it, or like what is it I'm trying to say,
like a revival.
Yeah, like I like when people really do a thing, like Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks in New York. Like they're a big band that really do, like they do Fletcher Henderson arrangements, and like they really do, and they have the old instruments and all the old stuff, and I'm like, that is so great that people keep that alive. So it's like I love, and it's nice
like
to walk in,
postmodern jukebox kind of thing almost.
Like it's them. Well, they do it more like modernized, I think, but like to really do it the old way, like even like the cowpokes. Like, man, it's fun that they all dress in like the same look, it makes it for a vibe. Like even though they're not doing super old stuff, like it still makes it like, woo. I like that. Like that I like, because I think I also like am traditional in that, like I think we make our own experience. So it's like when you go to like an old honky tonk event, it's like, well, if you wear sweatpants, like it's not going to feel like that.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
But also you don't, but also do you? But like, I think it's we create the energy around us that we want to create, and I think that's what's changed me on it. I'm like, to just kind of, I don't know.
I think for myself, again, it's just I've gotten to a point where I don't think there is a right answer with that kind of thing. And I just adore all kinds of different music, and whatever you're doing that's bringing you the most joy, that's probably the right way to go about it. And you can acknowledge simultaneously that it's not 1930, but who cares? Some days you want it to sound like it is. So like, who
days
cares?
We're gonna pretend it's
exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like, how did didn't you do Postmodern Jukebox at some point? How did that all transpire?
I've known Scott from New York. He that whole band started from the like Sleep No More McKittrick Hotel spot. And so like I've always known him, like he's been in my radar, and a lot of my friends have done it over the years. And I was putting out a record a couple of years, it was 2020. And I had met him, here and there over the years. And like, I was like, I should do one of those videos. Like, it'll be fun. I'd love to, try it out. It'll be good to timing with this record release to do one, blah, blah, blah. And so I reached out to Scott. I was like, hey, blah, blah. We met up in New York and we picked a song, and we did Last Night. That was the first one I did with him, the Strokes one. And it was like February 2020. Like, it was right before I was going to France and had to like fly home early because the world shut down. I remember that, and I was like deathly ill too when it happened, so I may have had COVID. But anyway, I did that. Blah blah. COVID happened, and then I ended up months later. I had another idea where for the first time in a while, I liked the Dua Lipa record when it came out, and it was like the first time in a while like I liked a modern pop record. I was like, oh my god, I actually really like this. And in my head, I was like, man, I would love to sing. I would love to sing one of these tunes. And I was like, I'm never going to cover this. And I was like, oh my god, Postmodern Jukebox would totally cover this. So I reached out to Scott. I was like, hey, do you want to do like a tratty Dua Lipa song? And they were like, definitely. So I flew to LA and did the second video, and then that one like did a lot better.
Yeah, that one creeps up every once in a while. So, yeah.
And so I think from then they started asking me to tour, and I wasn't able to do it, and then they asked me this Australia tour, and I was like, oh, super game. I've never been to Australia. And so I did a month with them in Australia. And from there, I just like kind of got on their call list, and so I did a couple more videos, and I did a couple more tours, and I'm still friends with them, and we've talked about doing some more videos and maybe touring with them again some point. Like, what's cool about them is that they Sonny and Scott are really like, they have a rotating cast, so it's kind of like this big family. So it's like I was doing the Cirque thing for a while, and now that I'm done, I was like, hey, I'm free again. Like, maybe hop, if you need someone for a tour, like I'll hop on something. It's kind of very like.
That's really nice.
Come and go with them. It's really they're really cool people, and they have a nice thing there, and it's like they have their thing, and it's cool, and then they really hire great people, so it's kind of a fun cast to be a part of because you kind of meet different people every time. And now they're Nashville based, so they have this whole like compound in Goodlettsville.
Oh wow!
And so they built this whole studio, and so I don't know if you see the latest videos, they all have like a similar vibe to them because they're actually able to do it in with one studio.
That's really beautiful. So, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're cool. I like working with them, and I remember when I'm a huge Kate Bush fan. And she's like my favorite. And so when that song got really famous, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing the Kate Bush for Postmodern Jukebox. Like, no one is getting it. I think Scott said that like a lot of people asked him that week, and I was like, no, I'm doing the Kate Bush one. That's me.
That's great.
She's pop music right now. I'm doing Kate Bush.
that was wild when that just came back around I should say out of nowhere, but yeah, that was pretty crazy.
I loved performing that song on tour. We did a UK tour with them, and I got to do that song. And do you know Kate Bush stuff?
I surface level.
Wuthering Heights. There's like it's much more famous in England, but like people who know Kate Bush know Wuthering Heights, and there's like this dance in this red dress, and so I got the piano player to do the intro of Wuthering Heights, like do 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 do, and I had this like red dress just like that with the like flower headdress, and I came out all Kate Bushy, and then we did Running Up That Hill, and it was just so much fun to do it in the UK.
I made my old job. I'm a middle school music teacher now, but I used to for years cool. I directed an after school music program. So, and at one point for one of the performances, I made them learn that song.
Oh, fun! It's such a fun song.
What? So, how was the Cirque du Soleil? If I can speak English, or I guess that's not English,
French.
but French. How was that whole experience? That had to be wild. It
was a very wild experience. It was very intense. I got into it super randomly. I did not know they were like doing this show at all. And they were taking a night off. They came to Station Inn and happened to see me, and they needed this role filled. And it took a while to get started because there was like a lot of contract stuff back and forth. And once I started, then it was like once you're in it, it's like you're just engulfed. Like, cause I went up to Montreal for their like in their headquarters, and we started training there, and then.
That's gotta be
like,
intense.
It was crazy. I mean, it's not like I wasn't doing acrobatics. So like the physical, there wasn't like I was being trained, but I was being trained to be a circus performer. Like I was being trained to do my makeup, and we were just figuring out the show. So trained in that way. Yeah. Trained in the environment. But I mean, I was too bad. I mean, I would have loved to be trained as an acrobat. It's like the coaches are really cool, but so it was that, and it was, you know, it's also circus people. So it was like, I was a strong man, and they were like all these acrobats in the cast, and like all these just wild things, you know, like being in the studio the first time, like in the big rehearsal studio, and just like watching people being like flipped like crazy, and I'm just like, you know, like I remember my favorite stuff was like, you know, we're like between doing something, and like two of the acrobats are just like hanging out, like one's like sitting like this with his hand like this, and like the other guy's head is here, and like he's balancing, and they're just like, you know, or like they just would like be like on handstands, like doing little push-ups, like in a handstand, just like, you know, they're because it's like, it's such a strenuous thing, like they constantly, or it's just like playing the trumpet, like you have to be constantly in shape to be able to do that kind of stuff. So just like the stuff I would see, like, you know, they have this bar thing, like a grippy, and like one dude would be like, just like on it, just, you know, like that kind of, or juggling on like a board, or like, it just
has to be really,
it was wild.
It has to be really stimulating. It has to feel creatively really great to just be in that kind of environment.
It was creatively stimulating and also creatively stifling. It was like both, because it was like, the artists themselves were so like, it was just such a rich artistic environment. I mean, the costumes are beautiful, the set design is beautiful, but then also it's like so much automation, like so much click track, and like everything is structured, and like, and that's the thing, that's not the fault of Cirque, that's the fault of like theater in general, which is why I never did it. So like that's for me, but that's a me problem, you know. I grew up with theater, and I never wanted to do it because it's like sitting in a theater for 8 hours while they do lighting cues, and you like sit in your position, and like I don't care enough about theater to do that. Like life's too short, and that's a personal me problem. And so once I got into that part, I was like, oh right, this is why I didn't want to do it.
Everyone's
like, I was like this, because I can't sit still that long. Like it's just not my energy.
Yeah, that's why we're musicians.
Exactly. It's like, and that's the thing, it's not their fault. That would be anyone who does a theater thing. I just am not made for that.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about. So the last record came out this year, right? Early this year, right? Am I crazy?
Bluer Than Blue
came out in what, 2024, I think. Yeah. Probably beginning of the summer, somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that. I should know this, but I don't know.
The new record, which is going to be coming out in not that long, what was like that turnover for you as a writer? Because that's a pretty fast turnaround to get from one.
Well, the last one wasn't original.
Yeah, but just in terms of attention, I guess, for lack of a better word, because I feel like, you know, when you have a project that you're spending that much time on, your mind, at least for myself, is so fixated on that thing. What was that like to detach from that and say, okay, now I'm doing original material and I'm going to do this? I assume the new one's going to be all original material? Or?
Yeah, it's all original.
Okay.
Well, so that one that came out was recorded like a year and a half before it came out. Mm-hmm. So I think that one was in January of 23.
Okay. Oh, so you had a good chunk of time in between.
And then that one was with the label. So like they kind of do a lot of the grunt work of like, I did the photo shoot, but they put it together and they did a lot of the artwork. So, and they working with the distribution and they do a lot of the press stuff. So when it's coming out with the label, I'm like part of it, but that's one of the reasons like I don't know the release. I don't remember the release date because I was less involved with that decision making than I am now with this record because it's independent. So that was like, my head was and then I was writing this record all of 2023. So I didn't start recording until January 2024. So it's kind of all set up. I actually recorded a totally different record in August of 23 that I was working on that's going to come out after this one. So I feel like it's like whenever a record's coming out, it's all lined up. It feels like very like one, but they're all
staggered.
They're staggered. And with writing, what I do, it's like, I feel like I'm starting to see a trend. It's like I work on writing something for a couple of years, and in the interlude of writing it, I'm putting out little jazz things because I'm always working on that stuff and I want to. And so it's going to be the same thing. Like this is going to come out and got this jazz record I recorded before doing this, and that's going to come out after. And I want to do another jazz record this year while I'm writing because it's going to take me 2 years to write another one. So I'll do a jazz record in between. And that's kind of how I work because with original stuff, it's like, what's the point of writing something if it's not, you don't feel good about it. So I don't really, I take like 2 or 3 years to write an album, and then the other ones I can like whip them out. You know, does that make sense?
No,
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. What do you find the creatively for you? What's been the difference between working on something independently and working on somewhere where you have some big backing behind it?
I mean, it's original, so that's vastly different. And so the style is very different. I mean, when I had the backing, that was mainly with that record label, the goal is a very specific sound of older jazz stuff. So it's always been kind of just that. And that's just kind of the name of the game with that stuff. So I kind of know that going into it. So it's not like it stifles creativity, because it's like that's the deal. That's the job. Yeah, the job is to make an old record. But because of that's very different. So I feel like when I'm doing that, I'm in that headspace of trying to make that. And then when I'm on this original kick, I'm kind of like just figuring out what it is going to be. You know, like it's just anything, all the influences can mix together into a pool. And I try to bring it down a notch a little bit with my original stuff, because I tend to like be so all over the place, and I don't mean to do that. I just do it because I didn't grow up with one style, and it's like helps me, but it also hurts me, you know, because it's like, I'm like, I don't know, it's like kind of country, but like, I don't know how to do country that well. So it's like, I don't know how to make a country record, you know what I mean? But I know a country-ish record. And so, but that's what with the original stuff, it's like this, and then I try to bring it here and hone it into one sound. And this one, I work with Mose Wilson as a producer for that reason, because he is much more based in a sound, and I wanted him to influence me to kind of get someone else to like
contain it in a way,
into a thing that makes more sense. And I think he did a good job. And then Dennis is really great too, because he co-produced, they did it together. And Mose was more on the like, he was more like, we were in the car like smoking a joint and like sitting and listening to it on a loop. And then Dennis is like more like in the studio, like, hey. Yeah, but like we should do this, and you know, like he's like really.
It's nice to have that balance. That's really
it was
great.
really nice, and I'm glad I have both of them in those kind of positions, because it reined me in. So I don't know.
One thing that I really want to know about you: as a writer, who are some of your biggest influences?
I've been thinking about that a lot, because I was talking about this with my friends, and it's like, I think for songwriting, when it comes to what I'm trying to write musically, I have less a specific writer, and usually like more vibes of like, oh, I love the way that like Jerry Reed stuff feels. I want it to feel as good as that. But when it comes to the writing, well, I do really like Judy Sill's writing. I don't know if my writing is similar to hers, you know, but I like her, and I love Kate Bush's writing, but like, again, like not necessarily similar to her at all. But when it comes to writing that I grew up with that I really love, like I kind of liked writers more. Like I've been always into like Beckett, and like I forget this guy's name because I just have his book, and he's this Russian poet, and it's like nonsense. It's like absurdist poetry. I really love absurdism and like just like words and nonsense words. And so those are more of the writers that like. I also love Anne Sexton a lot. So that's kind of what I've been inspired by, like, and also like French writing. Like I really like Jacques Brel and Barbara, like their songwriting I really like, and Margaret Manon, whatever, who writes Piaf songs. Like I love that kind of writing. Shakespeare, like that kind of stuff is more my writing, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, because I find for myself it's the same thing. I don't get me wrong, I love, there are many songwriters I adore, but most of the people I think who have influenced me in the biggest ways have been people outside of music, and the people who have made me
I also think I just don't think I'm not a super strong songwriter. Like I'm not trying to be modest. That's not a modesty thing. That's more of like a literally like we're in a town of really strong songwriters. And I think that that's an art form, and it's something that I don't know as much about. Like I'm newer to that, and I think that that's why my writing is not influenced by, and I want it to be. Like I'm working on that. Like all the stuff, all the country music I'm learning, I take into effect. And honestly, the writers around me influence me more than anything. Like my friends, I'm like, wow, that's cool. Or like talking to people about how they write, like that influences me a lot more than stuff that's recorded.
And that's one of the beautiful things about living in a place like Nashville is you are constantly exposed to that stuff, and it does. Whether it's against your will or otherwise, it's going to rub off. And if you're around people who are fantastic musicians, fantastic songwriters, and you have your eyes and ears open, it's gonna get in there.
Oh, I
somehow.
forgot to say though, I do really like Guy Clark and John Prine. I feel like
very
those
nice.
are really big. I always forget to say that because I really, really like their writing a lot. When I think of like people who I wrote, I'm like, isn't this line great? You know.
Yeah, I think both.
And Paul McCartney, I really like Paul
Oh,
McCartney. I mean the Beatles, but like I mean Paul McCartney. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like the stuff like Ram is like one of my favorite, and Paul Simon. Why am I not saying? Now remembering all my influences: Paul Simon, Paul McCartney, Judy Still, Kate Bush. And then I already forgot the first two I said.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good
Carmichael.
line.
Hoagie Carmichael too.
Oh, I love Hoagie. I think Hoagie is one of the great American songwriters of all time.
Yeah, totally.
I think he's in the top 5. If you had to have your Mount Rushmore of who are the American greats, Hoagie's up there. I adore his songwriting. All right, well, I gotta say, this was a ton of fun, and I'm so glad that this finally happened. This was there was a lot of delay, but we made it happen, and the songs sounded fantastic.
Yeah,
it was really wonderful to hear you.
Those are going to come out really good.
I hope
It was
so.
great to hear you again in that isolated context, because it's fun to hear you not with as much as I love hearing in a band context. It was really beautiful to hear it stripped down like that. So
thanks.
Heck yeah, thank you for
Cool.
doing this. This was fun. Nice.
We did it.
There you go, guys.
Or I'm gonna use your bathroom.
Go for it.